Everyone, welcome to the program. I'm Hala Gorani. We begin this hour with breaking news out of North Korea and new intelligence that shows the nuclear threat from Pyongyang could be even more immediate than we thought. CNN sources say U.S. intelligence analysts have assessed that North Korea has produced a miniaturized nuclear warhead. Now, the warhead is designed for delivery by one of those intercontinental ballistic missiles, the same missiles that the North has recently been testing. You see some of their range there on the map. The American president, by the way, Donald Trump, is on vacation, but he is going to make comments at another event. Perhaps he'll mention North Korea. He's about to hold a roundtable discussion on the opioid epidemic in the U.S. at his New Jersey golf club. If he talks about North Korea, we will cut live to that and bring you up to date. I want to cross now to Bruce Klingner. He's a senior research fellow for Northeast Asia at the Heritage Foundation. He was the CIA's deputy division chief for Korea from 96 to 2001. So you've been able, Bruce, to read these reports. CNN is reporting that analysts have assessed but not definitively concluded that North Korea has miniaturized a warhead that could fit into an ICBM. What do you make of that?
I'm surprised that people are surprised. When I was at the intelligence community in 1999, we worked on an unclassified national intelligence estimate that predicted North Korea would be able to threaten the United States, the continental U.S. with a nuclear weapon by the year 2015. We may have been off a few years, but certainly it's not a surprise. And we've seen statements by U.S. officials in the past that have said they believe the warhead has been miniaturized for the medium-range ballistic missile, which can threaten Japan and South Korea. And then we've had 4 U.S. four-star generals saying they assume or have to assume for planning purposes that North Korea already has the capability to hit the continental U.S. with a nuclear weapon. A lot of other outside experts say they're not there.
But there's a difference, obviously, between assuming and knowing and concluding definitively, and that could come in the following weeks or months, whatever the timeline is, that North Korea indeed can weaponize a long-range missile. That changes everything.
Right, but we may not know exactly where they are on a path, but we know what path they're on. So what we've seen, particularly the last 2 years, is a lot of cases of people being surprised because they underestimated North Korea's capabilities. In the 90s, parts of the intelligence community underestimated or dismissed the plutonium weapon program. In the George Bush administration, people dismissed the uranium program. And then in 2007, some people dismissed that the attack by Israel was on a Syrian reactor built by the North Koreans. So there's been this tendency over the years to downplay the North Korean threat until you can no longer refute the evidence.
And by the way, what we're seeing now on our screen is the July 28th ICBM test, the one that landed so close to Japan, obviously very worrying for the region. And there was that report that it in fact flew quite close to an Air France passenger jet. There you see the range from where that missile was launched to where eventually it landed in the Sea of Japan. It traveled 1,000 kilometers. What happens now, Bruce?
Well, in that test launch, it was flown to an unusually high trajectory that had it been flown at a normal trajectory towards the United States, experts are saying it could have reached 10,000 or 11,000 kilometers. And as you showed on the map before, that's certainly Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago, and perhaps also New York and Washington, D.C. So, you know, again, North Korea is the most, we refer to it as the hardest of the hard targets within the intelligence community. It's hard to get information, so you make your best assessment. And it may be a range of dates or a range of number of nuclear weapons. But we shouldn't be surprised that North Korea is continuing to develop these capabilities and that whatever the date they achieve them, you know, we know that is their objective.
So the question now is, how do you slow this down? Obviously, the region doesn't want North Korea to continue down this path. No Western country wants it either. Nikki Haley, the American ambassador to the UN, had this to say about China's potential role. Let's listen.
China stepped up and not only said they were going to vote for this, they announced that they were going to enforce, and they encouraged every other country to enforce. So this was serious. You have to remember that for China, the last missile launch took place right next to their border. Their ground actually shook. The Chinese people felt it. They know this is serious.
Okay, and that's Nikki Haley, Bruce, saying China knows it's serious. Do you agree with her?
I think China knows it's serious. They don't like what North Korea has been doing. but they've been very reluctant to impose pressure on North Korea. They turn a blind eye to proliferation occurring on their soil. They turn a blind eye to illicit activities occurring by Chinese entities in China that are helping North Korea. So President Trump criticizes China for not doing enough to implement required UN sanctions, which is true. But the U.S. can also do things that even this administration is still pulling U.S. punches on enforcing U.S. law. We should be imposing secondary sanctions on Chinese violators of U.S. law. That would...
But sanctions haven't worked. I mean, if you look even, let's go back to the Obama administration,
right.
Strategic patience and sanctions.
Right.
That's been the recipe for years. It hasn't worked. Why continue down that path?
I would say weak implementation of sanctions has not worked. Certainly negotiations have not. We've had 8 international agreements that all failed. We've had 2-party, 3-party, 4-party, 6-party talks. They all failed. When President Obama claimed during his administration that North Korea was the most heavily sanctioned, the most cut-off nation on earth, he was flat out wrong. We had, up until last year, we had sanctioned more Zimbabwean entities than we had sanctioned North Korean.
Bruce Klingner, thanks very much joining us there live with reaction to the breaking news of the Heritage Foundation. Thanks for your analysis. We appreciate it.